First of all, let me say that this is maybe the very first trial of a multilingual webinar in a wine sector. And I present Gianni Trioli.
Thank you, Giuliano, which is the second IoT solution we have been developed together with Wenda and ISVEA to respond to another need of wineries that is essentially the question: what happens to my wine when it left the winery and before it reaches the consumer? So this is a period which is not so well managed by the wineries. Often is outside of their potential operation. And there are some potential accidents that can happen during this transportation. So we are talking about heating with peaks that can reach more than 60 degrees. That is something we have been directly measuring. Prolonged period high temperature, like Panagiotis was starting to commenting, or even extreme low temperature. That also can happen in some season and of course in some geographical regions. And more classical and not depending on the season are shocks, pallet that falls down, carton which are getting wet, so the wet loading, and all these actions can happen. With which frequency? That's a good question, because I don't think someone knows exactly an answer. I show you some temperature that we have both measured or seen in the bibliography. So the upper one is a shipment of wine from Italy to Sweden in the first week, and then a week later a delivery of wine to Italian client in the same, more or less in the same region. We see here what typically happens during when we have a sunny day, let's say, when we have sun which is heating the truck, we have actually big peaks. Sometimes the peaks can reach 30 degrees, 30 degrees magnitude. And typically they go up, the peak is about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then goes down to the night. That happens every sunny day during the summer period. In some cases it can be lower, the difference. Some cases even not very significant, but it happens more or less every day. The second example I show you is a shipment of wine from Italy to China, till here. And in this case was put into a full container shipment with what is called the thermic cover to reduce the daily variation. And actually it worked, as you can see here, because even in the first days when the load was not yet on the boat, on the ship, we had some variation, but not so big as we can see on a truck. And we see that more or less during the whole time till the end of the transportation, we have a kind of constant temperature around 30 degrees Celsius. The last graph I show you is not something that we have measured. It's coming from a bibliography, but I wanted to show you that even very low temperature can be reached during transportation. This is a case of a shipment to Michigan, United States, where the load has reached minus 30 degrees temperature. So that's something that can happen. Which are the damages that we can see in this case? Panagiotis was already very well introducing the sensory variation, the sensory variation of the profile, but also we can have instability of some components. Of course, we talk about protein for heating and tartaric acid, tartaric crystals for a low temperature. The cork can get out of the neck of the bottle. We can have leakage. We can have bottle breaking. We can have carton deformation. all damages that can be very, very problematic on the market. So which are the IoT solutions that we can put in place to help wineries solving at least partially this kind of problems or avoiding this kind of risk? The most simple, basic thing is to record temperature during transportation. This is something which can be done with a lot of different devices which are on the market. Data logger that can record the temperature every hour, every 2 hours. And then you can read them through USB, NFC, or Bluetooth technology. And this is already very useful because it allows you to obtain the picture of what happened in terms of temperature to your wine. This, for example, is a graph we obtained with one of these devices, and which is showing the temperature of a load from his starting point in Italy to the different warehouses, to the port of Genova, and then finally on the ship, and then the travel of the ocean to United States. So we see again what we have seen before, the trend of the different peaks during the day, which are quite big, even in this case, and then a period of more or less constant temperature, about 30 degrees, even though in this case the load is going on the opposite direction with respect to the China one, which was shown before. Okay, that's already something that can be easily done by many wineries. We, to this, let's say, basic level, we have added with the project another service actually, which we think might be interesting, which is the use of these devices for temperature control to establish a direct relationship in between the wine producer and the final retailer, so the wine shop or the restaurant. In practice, how it does work, we put this device into the wine box, and when, of course, this is recording the temperature during all the shipment, and when it arrives to the retailer who is opening the box at the end, the only one who's opening the box, he can get the device. Is a Bluetooth technology, so he can, with his smartphone, just approaching the smartphone, read what is the information which are on the device by connecting directly with a page that has been set up by the producer specific for that wine. So the winery, by this way, receive the database with the data set of temperature, so knows what happened. If something very bad happened, he can send the alert to the retailer in order to avoid having a product which on the market which is not appropriate, is not representative of the quality of that kind of wine, but also can send information on the wine, marketing information, all the different story, for example, of the wine or news about the winery. And the retailer in this relationship can make directly the producer aware of bottle faults, like cork stain or of course broken bottles or cork exit or cork leakage, and can also provide consumer feedback, his own opinion, but also bad and good opinion of the consumer to the winery. So that can be something with some marketing value on that can be attached, let's say, to this temperature data logger. Another step. The
2 minutes, Gianni.
Okay. The two examples I've given before were supposing that you have someone at the end of the shipment that is reading your device or sending it back or doing something. And that is not always the case. So we have developed another device and another technology. This other device has other sensors, mainly shock, humidity, and geolocation. But the most important thing, it has a modem. So through the, let's say, telephone network, is directly sending to the cloud this data, and the winery can, on real time, in every step, see which are the conditions which have been suffered till now and where is its load. So that's another step forward, which make even easier and, let's say, more independent the control of the shipment by the winery. I'm going now to another service which is parallel to this, which is very much related to what Panagiotis was presenting before, because we have also set up, together with ISVEA, a quality control of the wine after shipment, meaning that we actually, once we know which have been the temperature variation that the wine has suffered during the shipment, we can reproduce that in a climatic chamber in lab condition and give the winery the, let's say, the profile of the wine after what has suffered during the shipment. I show you some data just to make you understand what can be the result of the heating and the result of the analysis. So this is the famous week we have seen before in Italy, from the warehouse to the port of Genoa. We can reproduce this kind of trend on a climatic chamber program. And in this specific case, this variable heating has been applied to 3 wines, 2 white and 1 red, 2 of 2019, the Orvieto and the Chianti, and 1, the Chardonnay from 2018. After this heating, there was physical observation, chemical analysis, and sensory analysis. So by visually, we can already see that in this case, the cork were exiting when were raising up from the neck of the bottle. And that's something that happens very often when the temperature goes above 35 degrees, 40 degrees. So it's something that can easily happen when you have heating which are not the most important heating we can see. In the other 2 cases, it was a screw cap, so we didn't see this effect. Sensory analysis has been done with a simple, let's say, preference test in between the non-treated and the treated wine. And in 2 cases, in 2 wines, so the Chardonnay and the Chianti, we have found statistical significance of the difference. So the wine were different. And in both cases, the difference was, the preference was in favor of the non-treated wine. But what might be even more interesting is the chemical changes that have been seen. These are, okay, spatter graph, just to explain how it is. So what you see here is the percentage of variation of the treated wine on the non-treated wine. So if you had 20%, for example, it means that this compound increased 20% compared to the non-treated wine. So color parameters do not change so much. If you can see, this is the red wine. We had some little variation on some compound, and nothing very, very significant. The same for the white wines, where you may have some reduction of brightness in one of the 2 wines, for example, or other indexes can vary. But again, it's not so easy by visually to recognize the effect of the treatment. even when we go to other parameters like SO2 or acetaldehyde or some cinnamic acid, we see some differences not in all wine. For example, in this case, SO2, free SO2 only was reduced by 20% in the Chianti, not in the other two. But again, it's not here the main evidence of the fact of the heating. But when we go on the volatile compound, things are changing very much. So these two graphs are related to different scales. So here you can see the increase, and you see the increase is 100% up to 1000%, meaning that at this point, the treated wine is 10 times higher in content of this compound respect to the non-treated. And this graph on the other side, on the right side, is the reduction. So this is 0, this is minus 100%. So a wine which has a compound which is here means that has totally disappeared because of the treatment. So what is very evident is that the wines are different. It's very evident there are some wines, like here the Chardonnay, which has a huge increase of certain parameters, more than 10 times, let's be clear. For other, like the Orvieto, the increase is for some compound, or not so generalized. The Chianti, for example, has almost no increase in all components. But when we go into the reduction, we see again very big difference in between the wines, but also that many compounds in all wines are totally disappeared. In some wines, isoamyl acetate, isobutyl acetate, for example, are 0, and other compounds. That is a situation that is not only for esters, like in this slide, but also for terpenes, as we can see here, and also other compounds related to the fat can vary. Like in this example, for Chardonnay, has an increase about double of the dimethyl which, depending on the quantity, can be a defect or an enhancer of aroma. And in other cases, like in this cases, the Orvieto has a significant decrease in vinyl phenols, for example. So temperature, heating is changing the wine in a very significant way. And we can now determine it and make clear what happens. All these services can be, to all these services we can attach blockchain technology, which in practice is a way to make a lot of copies of the data in order to avoid, to make it impossible to change the data later on, so they can have legal value. And that might be another important thing in case we can encounter legal problems, disputes with our client or a partner in the distribution system. And ongoing is the preparation of other two services. One is a benchmarking. When we will have enough data, we may be able to predict the situation in a certain season to a certain destination, and that may help the winery to better choose the way of sending. And also insurance company right now have difficult to propose policies because they don't have enough data. And when we will have more data on the risk of a certain damage in certain situation of shipment, that may be another possibility offered to the winery.